this firefighter overtime bill has a lot of momentum.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
So just as the House was passing by a big number the overtime bill for firefighters, we'll explain what that is in a moment, the Central Coventry Fire District put out a press release that said, okay, you're going to choke us to death. And the chairman of the board there is joining us. It's been a long time since we had Fred Gralinski on. Used to be a big to-do, the Coventry Central Fire District and fire districts in general. They've got their house in order. And this might just put another whack to the foundation. We'll talk about it coming up in a couple of minutes. Great to have you aboard. Thank you very much for tuning into the show. This whole separation immigration situation is kind of interesting. The headline here that comes from the President of the United States, who again had to be fact-checked when he asserted emphatically that those cages, you know, that the kids are in, that was part of Obama's program.
President Obama separated children. They had child separation. I was the one that changed it.
The president falsely compared his family separation policy to that of former President Obama. Both administrations used it. Mr. Trump did so aggressively, while Mr. Obama rarely separated families.
Once you don't have it, that's why you see many more people coming. They're coming like it's a picnic, because let's go to Disneyland.
Obama separated families when there was criminal implication or investigation, meaning the adults that were coming over looked at they were not just not the act of coming into the country, but worry about them being prior criminals. That was the most use of the separation strategy by the Obama administration. It was amazing watching the president last night trying to suggest that this was that the family separation as a policy wasn't his idea, it was Obama's idea, and he was trying to stop it. Meanwhile, it seems pretty obvious that his separation with his Homeland Security chief is about, amongst other things, that separation policy, which he wants to reinstitute, but can't find anybody to do it yet. Okay. You know, come on, man. Coming back home, there's now some conversation, media discussion about the teacher sexual assault conversation. There is no law in Massachusetts or Rhode Island that prohibits a teacher from having a sexual relationship with their students, 16, 17, 18. There are laws prior to consent that are general in nature, but this political football is starting to kick around a lot. The headline here shows you that the American Civil Liberties Union has now decided to object to the bill. First, they thought the first version of the bill last year was too broad. Yeah, it was too broad, it was a problem. And now that it's specifically targeted for educators, it's too narrow. Anita Buffoni did a nice summary of this yesterday.
Right now, under Rhode Island state law, if a teacher has sex with a student who is 16 or 17 years old, no crime has been committed unless coercion or force is involved. Now there's a debate over changing that. Under the proposed bill, a new clause would be added to third-degree sexual assault, making it illegal for school employees to have sex with students. Both of the state's teachers' unions opposed the measure.
And quite honestly, we don't have an issue generally with the subject matter of this bill. Our objection is that teachers and school employees are being singled out.
Several states have similar laws. Rhode Island is one of 30 where the age of consent is 16 years old. Former educator, now education blogger Erica Sanzi testified in favor of the bill. During a taping of Dan York's State of Mind, she explained Massachusetts and Rhode Island are the only states in New England without laws that protect students once they are 16.
All personnel records are confidential. So when my kid's teacher is fired for having sex with a student, I don't get to know about that. If they don't lose their state license, they can go get a job in another district. And if they do lose their state license, they can go to any state they want and do the same thing.
The Rhode Island ACLU also opposed the bill, explaining singling out teachers in this way is arbitrary.
We don't understand why the bill doesn't cover store managers or clergy. Why doesn't the bill cover volunteers of community organizations? And no disrespect, but why doesn't it cover the legislature?
Everybody should be shouting from the rooftops. It is not acceptable for people in positions of authority to be having sexual relations with the children in their care, even when they turn 16.
Now, the teachers testified that a teacher would lose their license if this conduct takes place, but proponents say it should be criminalized under Rhode Island state law. No vote was taken on the matter.
Okay, so we have Bob Walsh from the National Education Association coming in here on Friday. He has dismissed this entire concept, suggesting that, no teacher wants to do it. Listen, this happens. And it happens all too often. It's hard to quantify because when a teacher is disciplined or terminated for that kind of a thing, it's a private confidential matter. It doesn't come out of their personnel file, and then they can get a job somewhere else. Criminality is a different story. There'll be plenty on the table when Bob and I talk about this for the Friday show, so make sure you tune in to that. And finally, on the issues around the day, the Raimondo administration has been trying desperately to get the promise more than CCRI to RIC and to URI, 2 years of no-charge education in junior and senior year. Frank Sanchez, the president of Rhode Island College, was here last week talking about it, and advocating for it. He's coming on the radio, I think, tomorrow with me, or maybe he already did. We tape the TV show every day before I do the radio show, so sometimes anyway, he's pushing it pretty hard. But Nick Mattiello, Speaker of the House, was on WPRO this morning and said, don't think so.
I would say the chance of any new programming is going to be very slim this year. We're going to have a difficult time paying our current bills without adding any. Having said that, I support education. I think the governor is right on track with her desire to make education more accessible to our students. That's a great thing. But any new programming is going to be very, very, very difficult.
And a diplomatic way to say, not a shot. This is the governor's big baby. The speaker doesn't like giving the governor her big baby. And by the way, there is a shortfall. And by the way, the speaker, the Senate president, and the governor all agreed that they could put near $30 million in the budget for sports betting. And they're going to get a negligible amount of that money. Maybe to the state, $1 million or $2 by the end of the fiscal year. So that's got to be reset. A whole bunch of things are going to have to be reset. We have to do a show in the next week or two here on the Medicaid problem, where $60 million of money has been overpaid to the nursing homes, who are keeping a lot of that money, not because they're cheaters, but because they can't get their stuff reconciled with the state. It's a mess. So, in part, I understand why this Rhode Island Promise won't make the budget. But believe me, if there was a conceptual or political agreement, it'd make the budget. All right, speaking of the budget, the budgets of towns are going to be highly stressed, say the towns. Here's the headline: the overtime bill is en route to passage. What the governor does with it, I'm not sure, although the numbers seemingly are pretty they're probably veto-proof. Here's what Central Coventry said about it yesterday. Can you read all that? Let me just say that that's a cry for help, it seems to me. A press release issued by the board, and Fred Gralinski put that out yesterday. Good to see you, pal. Long time no see. Oh. Your release was a cry for help, was it not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're saying this is going to hit your little district that has a budget of about $5 million. $700,000?
$721, about 15%.
So you got the number down, $721,000.
Yeah, we actually quantified it. I'm not shooting this off of our Gail Corrigan, who takes care of our finances. I had her quantify overtime, quantify adding other people, going to 4 platoons. So we do our homework. We don't shoot from the hip there.
History. Actually, you know what? We'll just leave it right there. We'll come back and we'll reset the entire conversation, because the Central Coventry Fire District has been like this, and it's pretty even right now. Now, you got this. Stay with us. So let me reset the scene, the foundational big-time state story, and we'll talk about how one little fire district is in trouble with this.
The Rhode Island House of Representatives approved a pair of bills Tuesday that would mandate a 42-hour work week for firefighters. The bills propose that first responders would get overtime pay for working any more than that.
I'm happy for the firemen. Happy for the firemen of our state. Now they actually have equity like every other person who works in the state of Rhode Island.
Right now, fire departments in Tiverton, North Kingstown, and Central Coventry work 56-hour work weeks. They get paid time and a half after hour 53. Paul Valletta, the lobbyist for the Rhode Island State Association of Firefighters, says first responders deserve to be paid like everyone else.
It's just if they're going to put us in these shifts, they have to pay us for the extra hours worked.
We spoke with the president of the Central Coventry Fire District's Board of Directors. The district operates on a 3-platoon system. Fred Gralinski is against the bill and says making it into a law would push the district into bankruptcy.
And we're almost there, and this bill that's being passed is like grabbing defeat from the jaws of success.
He says he wants to find a way to pay firefighters better, and the bill takes that away because of what it would cost the town.
In order to go to 4 platoon, it'll be about $721,000, which represents in and of itself a 15% tax increase.
Gralinski also agrees with the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns that the standards should stay between local government and departments.
We think that should be their decision. It should be something that they work out locally.
All right, so there's a federal law that says 53 hours overtime, after 53 hours. You run a 3-platoon system in Coventry, which means the firefighters work what, hour-wise?
The way it works is it's a 3-platoon. So say like 1 week they'll work 2 days. So say like we have here a platoon will work Sunday and Thursday. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. That'll be their 2 days. The following week, they would work 2 different days, and every 3 weeks, they work 3 24-hour shifts spread out.
All right, so you're running them at, when they work 24 hours.
24 hours, correct.
And so they have, in Sunday, so they have 3 off.
They work
3
2
off.
days, 5 days off, basically. They work 1 day, then they have, here it is, B, they have 1 day they work, then 1, 2, 3 days off, and they work another one.
Got it. Okay.
So then, what happens is they basically work 2 days for 2 weeks and then 3 days spread out. So there's no 56 hours constant. Now, I will point out that when there was a lot of turnover, when we were first getting rid of all the, the people that we could get rid of, and luckily they left, there was overtime. And same with Providence, when they had all the firefighters retire, they had tons of overtime. And they are mandated to work. So during that tumult, or whatever you want to call it, they were working an excessive number of hours. We were paying them straight time, and they did a fantastic job. My hat's off to what these firefighters did during all, because we replaced 15 people, so we had a lot of shortages, and these guys stepped up and worked a lot of hours. But once you get through that mess, which we did, this is pretty stable. We got 1 guy out going for a pension, but we already replaced them, even though, so we actually added 1 extra body so that we can reduce overtime. And so we already put them through the academy. So we're doing things to make it a better working environment. A lot of firefighters like this, because we all know a lot of them have businesses on the side, so to work 2 days a week, pretty nice. And that's why we would need to know locally how to deal with it.
Here's the nature of this business. It's really interesting. A firefighter's job in one town is not the same as another town. In Coventry, knockwood, what's the average amount of fire calls on a given shift or week? Do you know what it is?
Yes. Actually, again, why within Coventry is different. We have 2 stations. Of course, we went from 5 to 2. Within the 2 stations, it's different. We have our Arnold Road station, which averages probably about 8 calls a day. It's very busy. We have one out on Route 117. They average about 2 calls a day. So even within our town, the stress level is different. So it would be needed to be a local negotiation. What do you guys in Coventry want to do? How can we make this a good quality place to work? How can we, as a manager and labor, be able to work? As we all know, money controls behavior. And so for me as on the board of directors, we need to have some control of the money if we want to control the service. When Mattiello jumps in and funny in his story how he said, well, they can't do college because they're strapped for money. Well, why would he strap us? Why does he need to bring us into their abyss? We're doing okay. And so by hitting us with this, they just took any power I had away of trying to keep good labor relations going by doing what our guys want. Not Providence, Central Coventry. What do you guys want? Would you like to work less hours? Would you like to get some more money in your pay? Our base pays are horrible. I'm the first one to tell you, the base pay in our place for we just hired 2 paramedics. I'm concerned, how are we going to keep this ship afloat? I need to do better. I need to be able to give them additional money to be a paramedic. Right now they get paid the same. I'm looking down the road before he shotgunned us with this of how can I make it better for paramedics, make it a little bit better for EMTCs, how we can better compensate our people based on their needs. A young family needs more money in the paycheck. Maybe an older family wants a better retirement. How do I balance that as a manager? This just took all that away from me.
Got it. Clearly you're thinking about all the right things. And again, we had Derek Silva from the City of Providence here the other day. And the one thing I neglected to challenge him with was the 53-hour federal work mandate. Because firefighter on the job is different. Like in his particular engine, on his ladder, he never sleeps. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 hours, and his 24-hour exercise in Providence. Not necessarily the case most nights in Central Coventry. They're happy in Providence. They're not getting the overtime right now because they went to the 4 platoons or went back to them after they were shoved into a 3-platoon effort by Mayor Lorza with no homework done. So they're advocating for the rest of the state to join them in quality of life. At the same time, there are a lot of young firefighters that want overtime. And I guess are going to cash in now. But communities have to make their own individual financial decisions as to what they can manage. And you're saying, I've got this ship finally steady, and this is going to blow a hole in it in a big way. Yeah. You're going to have to, okay, so we'll find out what Fred's going to have to do, because this is exactly what others are saying. Like the mayor of Warwick. Mayor of Warwick is saying, please don't do this. And his son's voting to do this. It's unbelievable. Be right back. Right next.
Tried this a few years back. I advised the mayor that it was probably not going to work out well, and sure enough, it was a disaster. It cost the city millions of dollars in legal fees, and guess what? They're back on a 4-platoon system. It's not an appropriate way to manage your workforce. So a mayor should not be able to hold a gun to the firefighter's head. You either do this, or we're going to impose a 56-hour 3-platoon system. That's what they want to be able to do.
You know what? Don't protest too much. There's no doubt that Mayor Lorza made a terrible mistake in the way he went about business in Providence. Sure. But what's going on in Coventry is very different. And the Speaker of the House right now is just banking on the political support that comes from that firefighter union. They spend a lot of money up at that State House. And I just have to say over and over again that not every firefighter is the same depending on the uniform in the town and the paycheck that they earn. And it's clear that there are too many communities here who need, in good faith, to be able to work with their firefighters on a marry of federal standards and legitimate platoon strategies. This is going to cause, in your little district, I say respectfully, you have $5 million of budget, and how many firefighters do you have?
30.
And 30 firefighters. It's going to cost you $700,000 because you're going to have to hire other firefighters to move them from 3 platoons to 4, correct? And then whatever overtime you have to budget in, because as you pointed out on the radio to me yesterday, more platoons, more sick.
Direct correlation.
Overtime. So it's almost like the fix is in that particular matter. But you made a bigger point to me, and that is about governance and the ability to get good people to serve. Talk to me about that.
Well, I actually have had many conversations with our chief for over a year. I look down the road, and it's going to be more and more difficult getting people qualified for what we need. We don't need just people to check their brain and go running into burning buildings. We are getting paramedics. 90%, 95% of what we do is paramedic. I mean, we had last year, we average about 10 fire calls a year, fire. We're paramedics, and we need these people with a brain and skills and a dedication to work. And I'm concerned about how we're going to get those without changing our compensation program. But I'm thinking as a manager, not just, but how do I do that when so much of our money is going out the back door? Say, for instance, last year our pension went from 17% on the payroll dollar to 27.5%, and this year it's going up to 29.5%. When you're getting, that sucked out almost, well, 4% increase in our taxes last year didn't even cover our pension increase.
All right, so that's one aspect of getting good people. But then the other is getting good people to run for office. You're concerned about mandates from the State House. Tell me about that.
Well, you look at your school, your town council, the fire districts. When any time some union person who has direct access to the Speaker or the Senate President can just go in and overrule anything we do while we're trying to build good relationships with our employees so we don't have all this management labor. I'm trying to work, and we have come a long way there, working with the president, union president Jim L. Magno and Kevin, and we're able to work things out very well. But I need to have some control over the money in order to have something on my side, because the contracts tie you up. I mean, you're in knots. We all know that. So they just, by taking $721,000, which is what it costs to go to the 4 platoon, they took years out of our ability.
But we only have a minute. You're worried that if Smith Hill continues to just tell everybody how to do their jobs, that nobody will want those jobs.
Nobody's going to
School committees, fire districts, all that kind of thing.
We're already seeing that. People don't want to get involved. You know, you see stuff like this and you say, why did I bother planning? Why did I have a vision for this fire department? Why did I take the beatings I took from the union to get where we are today? If this is what we're going to get, forget about it. And that's what they want, because the union can then, the union leadership, I'm not bashing any worker, they're workers. The union leadership can then take control of the place. And they had it last time. The end result, they bankrupted the place. The union was running that place.
All right, well, it looks like this is going to pass the Senate, too.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the Senate's watching this show and your argument, but it feels like this steamroller's happening. I only have 30 seconds here. Tell me what happens next.
Well,
if the governor sign, I don't know if the governor's going to sign it. Most likely, you know what? I don't know if the governor's going to sign
Mattiello,
it.
the way he talked on Gina, I think it's a slam dunk. I mean, I don't know what he traded for Gina, but she won't fight the firefighters. When she first came on, if you remember, they shut the place down. They wouldn't even let people come in from national. And when we were in bankruptcy, she wouldn't touch it. She was supposed to be in charge of the bankruptcy. She handed it right off to Mattiello. She wants nothing to do with fire. They're brutal. The union, not the people. I'm not bashing the people,
no, I
but the union leadership.
So, is bankruptcy going to be an option for you?
Well,
I only have a few seconds.
We're going to have to look at a couple of things. Do we go to one station, staff it with 6 people, instead of 2 stations? The one out on Flat River Road gets 2 calls. Do we do that? Do we go to slash minimum manning? We will probably have to go into binding arbitration, which is going to be very expensive because we're not going to have the money for raises.
Right, it's a mess. From one town to the next. Fred, thank you for sharing. Final word when we get back. This firefighter bill is creating a mess. It really is. And some mover shakers in the unions because of self-interest, are putting a burden on the rest of the state. We'll follow it. We'll talk to you tomorrow on the radio at 3 on WPRO. And back here with the Secretary of State of Rhode Island tomorrow night. Good night.